Okay. All right. Let's move on to catcher. So obviously the Mets. You think of the Mets again. You think of Gary Carter. He was
Mhm.
just such a huge personality. Was in the spotlight all the time. You want to talk about the catcher position?
Yeah, no, I made sure to, Gary Carter definitely, Mike Piazza definitely, but I made sure to put three catchers because I think Jerry Grody is deserving of being put on this team. If you look at his just kind of, you look at the box score, if you look at his baseball reference entry in terms of his hitting, it's never going to stand out. It does not compare to Mike Piazza's power numbers. It doesn't compare to the RBIs that Gary Carter put up. Um, but the importance that he had to develop, helping mature and kind of harden the pitching staff of 1969 can't be overstated. He was kind of rough around the edges, to say the least. And he really got on his pitching staff, but it worked to great effect. And when Gil Hodges, the manager of the '69 Mets, built that team or kind of constructed that team, he will always emphasize strength up the middle. When that comes to down to catcher and Jerry Grody, the pitcher, and of course he had a lot of great ones. Shortstop, but with Bud Harrelson, and center field with Tommy Agee. And that was it defensively was so vital to the success of the '69 Mets, both in limiting the opposition from scoring runs. And Jerry Grody was the really the heart of that. Of not only, as I said, molding the pitching staff, but also making sure that runs weren't scored. So I wanted to make sure that he would not go unrecognized in terms of his importance. I think I mentioned in one of the lines of the book Johnny Bench, who was regarded as not only the greatest catcher of the '70s, but probably the greatest, one of the greatest catchers of all time, who said that if Jerry Grody was a Cincinnati Red, he'd be a third baseman.
Hmm. Does Todd Hundley not get forgotten, but does he have a little tarnish on him because of the Mitchell report and the chemical use
Yeah,
claims?
he does. But I think it's with, as you're saying, with a lot of the steroid guys. I think the Barry Bonds and the Roger Clemens, they may well get to the Hall of Fame one day. And as personally, I would say they deserve it, but I think they probably should get in, and the steroid era should be recognized and put in proper perspective. So in the case of Todd Hundley, he certainly has his place, or had his place, in Mets history. He had the most home runs in a single season, tied with Carlos Beltran, until Pete Alonso did it just last year. And surprising to many Mets fans, he has the most home runs of any Met in the 1990s. So he does have a place in Mets history. I don't want to come off as saying a lot of people did it, but the steroid era, we're going to have to put into perspective, um, and recognize that the steroid, we can't really parse down who took steroids, who was on performance enhancing drugs, and who wasn't. So to answer your question, yes, but at the same time, he was a great power hitter for the Mets in the 1990s, and you can kind of put your own asterisk on it, if you will.
And the other the catcher that you mentioned, I'm glad you did, is John Stearns. Now he was on some Mets teams that weren't very good, but if anybody who knows John Stearns knows he was hard as nails. Um,
Yeah, yeah, no, he kind of supplanted Jerry Grody at catcher, and I believe in terms of WAR, his WAR is a little better. That being said, I had to put Grody over Stearns. Stearns, I think, made three, four, five maybe made four All-Star games, if I'm not mistaken. And as you said, those were for some pretty bad Mets teams, but he still was deserving of those All-Star selections. Was pretty fast actually for a catcher. I don't know exactly how many stolen bases he had, but more than most catchers would produce.